Hello, everyone. We're just going to get started in a couple more minutes, but wanted to go ahead and get everybody in and just notice that we are recording this session, which is also, we will be posting the session, which means that you'll have access to it at a later time and that your colleagues who might not be here today will also have access to it, but just fair notice that, that we are recording this session. All right, and like I said, we'll get started in just a minute. All right, so it is 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and kick things off. Welcome, everyone. My name is Johanna Byrd. I'm the Executive Director with NASW Pennsylvania Chapter, and I'd like to introduce my co-presenter for tonight, Kristie King.
Hi there, everyone. Good evening. We are so happy to have you here with us tonight. My name, again, Kristie Jo King, President of NASW Pennsylvania. I know we have some wonderful faculty and students across the Commonwealth here with us tonight. We always enjoy these events that we partner with Pauseway. We've been doing some really great things over the past, I want to say, year and a half, 2 years worth of partnerships. It's just really wonderful, and we're so fortunate to have the great leadership that we do at Pauseway and NASW to have these great events. So we're so looking forward to being here with you tonight and telling you all the great things we have in store for one of my most favorite events.
For sure. And just as kind of an FYI, if anyone does have, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to be interactive throughout the day, but if there are questions that you have afterwards, or especially if there are faculty members that are on here that have questions about like how to get your students registered or something like that, feel free to stay on at the end for a little bit, and I will hang out until all of the questions have been answered. So just feel free to like write them down, and then we will address them from there. So we wanted to give, this is also the opportunity for to introduce Pauseway briefly. It doesn't look like the person that I thought was going to present it is here, but Alex, you're here. So Alex, are you willing to say something about Pauseway?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Redkay. I'm a professor at Millersville University, and I'm the president for Pauseway, which is the Pennsylvania Association for Social Work Education. So we represent social work students in the state of Pennsylvania, social work faculty, adjuncts, and we just try to advance, events or things like that help and benefit students and faculty. And as mentioned, we've collaborated with NASW, and we try to do a lot of joint events. We're super excited about tonight. We're excited about LEAD. We're also excited about the NASW conference that's going to be coming up in October. So we hope everyone signs up for that. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Johanna, Kristie, or myself, we can answer your questions. So nice to have everybody here.
Also, feel free to utilize the chat. When Kristie's speaking, I will monitor the chat for questions. When I'm speaking, I'm sure that Kristie will. And of course, it's a great opportunity to interact with each other. But yeah, feel free to utilize the chat. So I have a very short PowerPoint that I'm going to kind of go in and out throughout the time that we're talking today. Because I don't want to I don't want to not have the opportunity for us to see each other and engage, but there are some things that might be a little bit easier to see. like in a visual format. So I'm going to go ahead and start that screen share, and then we'll see where we go. Kristie, can you see everything? Okay, awesome. All right, so here's like, and then I'm like operating between two screens. So let me just see as the functions go for like how things work aren't always the same. So what we wanted to start off with is just like, what is LEAD and why do we do it? So LEAD is the Education and Advocacy Day. Legislative Education and Advocacy Day is what it stands for. It's kind of getting extended into a week this time, but we still have our major event. We do it for a couple of major reasons. One, it's a really good opportunity from our perspective within NASW to make a splash at the legislature and to have the social work voice be heard. There have been definite times when, when the bill, whatever thing that we were advocating for at that moment in time has made substantial progress because of the events that happened at LEAD. So there definitely is a benefit to, to NASW-PA and our legislative agenda, which has played a part in getting things passed in the past, such as BSW licensure, the Practice Protection Act that passed recently, title protection. It played a part in, even though this ended up going through executive action, the recent change to have school social work certification was something that we advocated for at LEAD at one point. So those sort of things do happen and do make a difference. The second reason that we have it, though, especially like when we're working with the schools of social work and all of the social work students, is that it's really a hands-on educational activity to train all of you as students in one of the most important things that you're going to learn as a social worker, and yet that you have one of the least opportunities to learn in a classroom setting, and that is the direct advocacy with your elected officials. Now, for that matter, it can happen at the it can happen at school board meetings, as many of our folks can attest. City councils, town commissions, all the way up to to working with the national Congress and/or the Supreme Court, or advocating to the president. But regardless, that it is part of our code of ethics. It's part of what we do as social workers. We're one of the very, very few professions where I was just having this conversation with our contracted lobbyists. Every profession, every association has like a lobbyist or a lobbying group where they advocate like on behalf of their profession, but we're one of the only groups that they've ever encountered where advocacy isn't just like something that we do to protect ourselves, but it's like an essential part of our professional training, and it's something that all of us as social workers are ethically required to do, which is kind of why I have section 6.04 of the code of ethics up here. Kristie, do you want to pitch in do you have comments at this point about what is LEAD and why do we do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so important. This is why this specific code is in our ethics, is because of how important our voices are to help those that we're serving, not only who we're serving, but also ourselves as a profession. It is so important that we really look at deeply at our code of ethics, and especially this standard on why we need to be engaged at a macro political level. Paul, you might hear me say this multiple times, but like politics is social work. It's our voices that are needed to help elevate those in need.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's my lovely quote that goes with that. Like the quote is from Gandhi, and it's, anyone who says they are not interested in politics is like a drowning man who insists he is not interested in water. It's an essential, it's not only an essential part of what we do as social workers, but it's so literally impacts every aspect of our lives. It surrounds us. It's, you know, and it's not just our lives, it's our clients. You know, and so there's going to be times when, you know, when the best way to impact your clients' lives or to fix your clients' problems is to change something at the policy level, at the macro level, to make a difference there. You know, and so politics or policy, governance, all of these sorts of things are not just something we can put on a shelf and say, well, this is something that doesn't interest me or that doesn't involve me, or that I want to focus more on the clinical side of things. You know, I'll just help my clients, you know, and not get involved in this side. That's not something that we have the luxury of doing, because, you know, if we're doing that, then we're doing our clients a disservice by not jumping in at the policy level where needed. And so again, we need this like hands-on opportunity to, you know, to sort of get some of this training as far as like, what does that look like when you're meeting with your elected officials. And this is really good for that. So now we're going to pass it over to Kristie, who is going to kind of talk about her experiences, having like not that long ago been a student, and kind of her lead journey.
Yeah, so this is something that I always get like, oh, so jazzed up to talk about, because I absolutely love lead. I graduated from Kutztown University, so woohoo, go Golden Bears, back in 2013 with my bachelor's. I attended my first lead in 2009, I believe, whenever I started my social work journey, and really have had just, I've attended everyone ever since then, both in person and virtual. And it is truly one of my most favorite events. Thinking back of what the experience was like as a student, and just really being like having that like imposter syndrome kind of vibe, like, hey, am I really able to go talk to an elected official? Are they really going to listen to me and ask questions? I'm from rural Pennsylvania, out in Cambria County, and you know, politics are very different out here compared to Berks County, where I was in school. You know, and really having the opportunity to meet with my local officials that I had back in Cambria County, also with the ones in Berks County, because of just where I was living at the time. It was really, really excellent experience, being able to really practice those skills that were taught in our social work education. You know, I really felt very prepared to go and talk to our elected officials, and having the support from our educators to be able to get to go do that. I remember my very first rally and getting to hold up the signs and being just so excited to see so many social workers around me rallying and advocating for something so important. You know, since then I've been able to attend like my one most favorite event to share was what we were advocating for at the time was BSW licensure. And actually Tim Sipe, I'm not sure if he's on here today or not, and we were advocating for that back in 2012 and 13. It passed, and I was actually able to go to and Joanna, I'm going to have to ask you to help me with the acronym, because she was there too. Yes, we attended the IRC meeting. That was one of the events before the pandemic, I believe, occurred. But we went with some students from Kutztown as well as Tim Sipe. But I was able to, you know, attend lead as a student, and then as president-elect, you know, seeing it full circle happen because of the advocacy that we did. You know, also being an advocate for Act 76, that was in 2018, whenever that passed. And again, being able to be there. And I'll never forget that day. That was one of the first leads I attended as a board member, being an active member of NASW. And we had, I think that was the largest amount of social workers we had at a lead that year, and our voices were just heard down the hallways of Harrisburg, and it was very empowering and very exciting. Because of COVID-19, we've had to really change the way that we do our advocacy event, but I still think that it's really a really powerful event. We still get to make those connections with our legislators and be able to be a voice for our profession. We also have the opportunity to build those connections, just being able to build those connections with my local legislators. I've been asked to attend or participate like local events talking about mental health for different events for students at the high school level, being asked my opinion on just like thoughts about things that are happening in our local area whenever it comes to like the opioid epidemic, or how we can like work with the mental health crisis that's going on. So again, these connections that we make even as students really last so much longer than they do. Once a name is given and they make a connection, you might be asked by a local legislator on your opinion on something. So it's really great to start building those connections now as a student, as you continue on your education in social work and then into the profession. So yay, lead. Woohoo.
Yay, lead for sure. All right. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time here than I think what we had booked out, because I've been getting a lot of questions because the program for LEAD does look a little bit differently this year. So let's talk about like what that actually looked like, what that means, like, if you've registered, so on and so forth. Again, please feel free to type your questions in, or even to unmute yourself after I've got like 3 slides on the, on this sort of thing. So like after we've gone through those 3 slides, anything that I haven't addressed or that wasn't clear, please feel free to ask questions. So the big difference with LEAD this year, including that it continues to be online, one of the reasons why it continues to be virtual, while between Omicron variants and wanting to make sure that we kept our participants safe, there are still limitations at the Capitol about like meeting size and even like the attendee meeting size. So if like 20 people had the same representative and was all going to meet with them, it might be limited to only 10 people being able to be allowed in the meeting room. And that didn't seem like a very fair way to, because there would be no way for us to regulate who was, who went where. And so we did decide to, that it would be easier and probably better access for everyone if we did keep it virtual, at least for 1 more year. But what we did decide is that we wanted to shake things up and provide a little bit better access, and to and to address one of the major concerns that has come up with LEAD throughout the years, which is that students or other professional attendees still really felt kind of unprepared for going, and some of that is like Kristie was saying earlier about imposter syndrome and not and just like kind of not feeling like you're ready when you very well may be, and kind of accepting and addressing your own power. But some of it is that preparation does help, and so we wanted to provide more training, more opportunities for just feeling prepared and getting the information as much in advance as possible. So we are doing a week-long, 6 days, not including weekends, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then again Monday, Tuesday, of different programs that will be each day at 11 o'clock on Zoom. The Zoom link will be the same for everything. So when you've registered for Zoom, when you've registered for LEAD once, you've registered for as many or as few of those programs as you want to attend. If you're not able to attend the trainings, they will be posted on the website within 24 hours of each. That's what we're guaranteeing. We're hoping to do it earlier, but what we're guaranteeing is that each of these will be posted within 24 hours of when they occur. So I know, for example, that there's one group where their college is on spring break that entire week before LEAD, and they're going to be coming in and going to these ones on like the 21st and the 22nd. That is perfectly acceptable, but you'll also be able, if you want to get all of the materials, you would be able to watch everything on video in advance. If you do have to pick and choose which ones to go to, I would definitely, or if you were watching a video of which video to watch, this why and how we advocate and the LEAD logistics is probably one of the most important, because it will go over like the literal how things work, how to access your meetings, you know, what it actually means. The rest of it is a lot more like informational. There'll be some really good panels on like communicating with your elected officials that will have like several lobbyists in attendance, some of whom are like social work lobbyists and or former legislators. We have NASW's national president, Mitt Joyner, coming in to talk about advocacy. We have the two chairs of the Legislative Caucus in the PA House, Representatives Wendy Thomas and Mike Schlossberg, the Republican and the Democrat chair for the Mental Health Caucus, will be doing a legislative panel on like the current conditions on mental health in Pennsylvania. And then on Monday, the day before LEAD, we'll be doing a real deep dive into the issue itself that we'll touch on for just a few minutes tonight. But you know, and we'll probably talk about a little bit on that on the 15th, on the first day. But yeah, we'll do more of a deep dive on the issue so that after you come out of that, we're talking about that for an entire hour, you're probably going to be comfortable having a 5-minute or a 15-minute appointment on it with your legislators. And then on the 22nd, and that one, I'll go ahead and jump to the next slide. The agenda for LEAD itself, in between 8 a.m. and 11 a.m., we will be working to schedule appointments with the members of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. That is going to be scheduled by school, so we're not targeting every member of the PA House, but for example, we will get the member of the House who represents the district where Kutztown University is located or Marywood University is located, that sort of thing. And hope to get appointments confirmed with each and every one of those. Those will be posted. The links for those will be posted, and I'll get more into that in a second. The meetings are only scheduled for 15 minutes, and we are going to need to be like pretty firm about the time because the meetings will be scheduled back to back on the same Zoom links. So we're going to, you know, so if your appointment goes over, then you might be running into somebody else's appointment, which isn't probably the best thing. So we're going to want to be pretty firm about keeping it to 15 minutes. Even saying goodbye if our elected officials are meeting longer. And then, so you might only have like one appointment scheduled during this whole 3-hour time, and that's fine. That's to be expected. If you want to attend others, you can. You might have one with your representative. If there's somewhere else on the list, you might just want to attend for other like neighboring schools. You know, or maybe you want to reach out to your personal rep separately if they're not, you know, if they aren't somebody who would come out on a list. But but they're just going to be scheduled anytime in this window. And then at 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock is when we'll come together one more time, where we'll have our final rally event, where we're going to have several guests from elected officials and or candidates in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and just do one more final celebration of the social work profession. So first off, you want to make sure that you're registered. If you register online, you'll have the option, like if your school is paying for everyone, for all of the attendees to come, you still need to register yourself. Just make sure to click the button that says my school is paying for me. And for those faculty members who might be on this call who are going like, well, what happens with that afterwards? I'll let you know that we will be sending an invoice with a list of your students to confirm afterwards. But if your school is not paying for you, then the charge as a student is, or actually for anybody who wants to participate, is $10, regardless of whether you're an NASW member or not a member, regardless of whether you're a student or a professional. However, if you want CE credit if you're a licensed social worker, which is really the only place where that would come into play, if you have your LSW or your LCSW or your LBSW, and you want credit for attending, then it is an additional fee, and you would take care of that when you register. Registering, we're asking you to click the button to say like which sessions you plan on attending, just so that we can have an idea about like who's going to be there, what kind of numbers to expect, like that sort of thing. It does not, like if you change your mind and you decide you can come last minute, you don't have to do anything extra, just use the link. The link is the same for every event. So just click the link, and you'll be able to attend if you're able to make it. So that's the important pieces about getting registered. If you're not already registered, make sure you get signed up. Even if you only plan to attend like the day of and like go to the visits and go to the rally, or if you are able to make the whole thing and you're going to go through all 6 hours, or you're going to watch it on video, regardless, the registration process is the same. Again, we've already kind of covered that if you do miss one of the trainings and you want to catch it up afterwards, all of the videos will be posted within 24 hours. That deep dive one that's happening on that Monday right before LEAD, we will try to make sure that one gets posted a lot earlier so that you can like watch it, let's say like 6 o'clock at night before LEAD happens the next day. And they'll all be posted online. But the main thing, this note that I have here about the resources provided to attendees, when you register or really once we're ready to launch it, all registered attendees will get a link to a website that is only for LEAD attendees, and everything will be posted there. We'll have a booklet, a resource of information. We'll have talking points that you can use to talk to your elected officials. All of the Zoom links for the various appointments with your representatives will be on that link as well, as will all of the videos. We don't have that available yet. Once we do have it available, we will make sure it goes to all attendees. I can also tell you our commitment is to make sure that all of that is completely 100% done and accessible to you by the time that first session happens on March 15th at 11 a.m. So that we'll be able to like demonstrate that as a part of that session. And so that you have some tools at your disposal to be like, okay, what's the name of the rep that I'm meeting with? Like, can I do some research about that person in advance? Find out more about them. Can I, do I know any more about like the name of like, if I'm meeting with a staff member instead of the rep themselves, can I learn more about about them. So all of that will be accessible to you. Again, no later than March 15th at 11 o'clock. We'll make sure that it goes out to all of the attendees. And that factors into that fourth button right there about preparation, making sure, that you will have an opportunity to do that. You can do preparation on the bill right now. It's Senate Bill 705. It's connected to telehealth in Pennsylvania. We'll be talking about that at the end. But if you want to do preparation to learn more about like who you're meeting with, like what their positions are on other things, you'll get that opportunity. So I'm going to stop slide sharing again. And the next one that we have in there is, let's see, first, I guess I'll sort of see if there's any questions about the process, LEAD itself, like the mechanics of just going to it. Or Kristie, if there's anything you want to add or comment.
Yeah, sure. I think sometimes whenever it is your first time attending LEAD, or like the thought of like, hey, like maybe I won't get to like talk to the actual legislator, like, and I'm only talking to the staffer. Whenever like that's a feeling that a lot of people that attend, like students that attend LEAD the first time, sometimes really, really struggle with. But no, like talking to the staffer is sometimes a better option than talking to a legislator, just because of the knowledge that they may have directly about the bill. Oftentimes the staffers are the ones that are like having more direct contact with constituents, than maybe the legislator themselves. So, know that if you are talking to a staffer, that's still extremely important and really part of this journey as well. And know that like, your voice will still be heard even talking to a staffer. So, building those connections, again, is just another step in this journey of social work.
All right, I don't see any other questions on the mechanics yet. Again, now would be a time if you want to unmute, if you have anything you want to ask, again, specifically about like how LEAD works or what will be happening that day. Now would be the time, or again, we'll hang out after the event as well to answer some questions. But moving on with the agenda, we have like 5 minutes laid aside for just benefits of, for the students who attend LEAD. We've already talked a little bit about that with some of the, just building those skills of, working hands-on with your elected official. Kristie, I think I was meant to pass that one over to you as well. So go right ahead and I will fill in anything that you'll need.
So talking about what to expect.
Now the benefits for students who attend LEAD.
Yes. Yeah, so there are a lot of benefits of attending as a student. I know again it's a little bit different platform because we are virtual, but our our staff have done a wonderful job at NASW Pennsylvania to really make our online LEAD events very engaging and interactive. Even with versus like being in person. There's definitely a very different vibe, but still the connections that you're going to make are really going to be like long lasting. There's a very good chance, like there's chances that you might have different members from the board of NASW-PA that will be accompanying you in to your meetings. As well as, of course, your faculty there at the university. They may be involved in the discussions as well. But again, like building these connections and the skills that you're going to get, like it's okay to talk, and to build those relationships with your elected officials. Oftentimes, like finding something that small that you might have in common with them, it can really help build relationships. I think about, again, going back to my time whenever I was a student, and in Berks County, the one elective official was really involved with the 4-H program. And I'm also like a 4-H'er, so I don't know if we have any other 4-H'ers here on, on our meeting, but 4-H'ers are a lot like social work. We can. There's a lot of different things that we can talk about. So just even briefly talking about like, hey, I was involved in 4-H too, and this is how it impacted me. Kind of like just having that small talk is sometimes really important. Again, we don't have a lot of time with our elected officials. It's 15-minute sessions, but again, starting with some small talk can kind of like ease your nerves too along the way. Because it is an online event, like throughout the week, we'll have the chat section going. So if there's people that you're looking to connect to, even from NASW Pennsylvania, different division chairs, individuals on the like executive board, like we'll have our names in there, to be able to contact and like introduce ourselves as well. What's really important is whenever you're done, whenever you graduate with your BSW or MSW, getting involved with NASW, we can help build those connections for you too, just professionally, like different ways to network. And again, we always love to see graduates come back to lead so that we can, again, grow our voice as a profession.
Great. Thank you, Kristie. And I want to apologize. Earlier, I had screen sharing still on when I didn't think I did. So yeah, you were watching like my computer go through all its various screens. But all right. So now it's time to transition over to what's labeled as the brief advocacy training. And this is definitely an area like I've given like up to 3-hour presentations on like, effectively advocating to your elected officials, or like the ethics of advocacy and that sort of thing. This is more like the 20-minute version. So it's definitely edited, but I think it still like gets some of the highlights to at least, again, like the intent of all of this is to help you feel a little bit more comfortable that you know what you're doing and what to expect. So before I do have a couple of slides on this that I want to share, but and as we get started with this, the main thing that I want to emphasize is that you already have the skills that you need. I almost guarantee it. Even if you're in your very first social work class and you're only starting your NAS, your program and your journey as a social worker, you still know more about social work than pretty much every legislator in the Pennsylvania General Assembly. We've got, we used to have a social worker in office. He left to go take another position actually in the Biden administration. But other than that, the closest thing we've come to a social worker in, that's in office right now is our one guy, Representative Frankel, I believe, whose wife and daughter are both social workers. And so, you can have a pretty decent conversation with him about social work. But other than that, again, you are the expert. You're coming into this with far more knowledge about what is happening than your elected official. And that's part of what I need, because I think we put maybe less so now, I don't know, but we tend to put elected officials on pedestals and think that because they're elected officials that they have some sort of expertise or knowledge that we don't have, and that just simply isn't the case. We have to accept that our legislators, our representatives, are humans just like we are, and that we have something to offer them, and that is part of the reason why we're having these meetings. That we're going to help them by sharing something relevant to them. thinking about like, any kind of representative, well, really any elected official, even at the school board or the county commission level, all the way up to our, but certainly where we're focusing, like on the Pennsylvania House, you might see, if you go to a session, you're going to be voting 1 minute on like plumbing regulations, and the next on healthcare, and the next on like crime and criminal justice, or crime prevention, or police officers, and the next on whether to like public health and COVID restrictions, and then licensure for every field in existence, and it's like, it's literally impossible for one person to be an expert on every single one of those things that a legislator is going to be voting on, even within an hour of being on in the House floor. So they are dependent on the knowledge of others, partly the knowledge of their staff, partly the knowledge of their of their constituents and the people who are meeting with them to talk to them about these issues. So again, you have to accept that, again, their humanity, their lack of knowledge, the fact that you do have something to offer. But I will also say in this that the piece of the how-to that I would most emphasize is that no matter how, I mean, politics is almost is especially now an emotional experience. These are things that we feel passionately about. These are issues that you can be really, really sure that there's a right and a wrong. But if we walk into a legislator's office and tell them how wrong they are, or tell them, or tell them that they, that because they don't support our position, that they're doing something wrong, or we're not going to get anywhere with them. And that goes all the way back to our first trainings that we get as social workers about like starting where the client is. Well, the same principle applies to starting where the representative is. You're going to make a lot more progress if you talk to them about it if you talk to them about an issue based on the things that are important to them. If you can reframe a situation to something where it applies to their values, and if you can like kind of gently nudge them in a direction, that gets them even slightly more towards where you want to go. I definitely could share stories about how there have been times where we were getting a bill passed, where there was somebody who had voted against us, and we eventually managed to get the bill passed. We didn't ever manage to get them to vote for us or to change their vote, but we managed to get them to stay out of our way and to not be an active obstacle in getting the bill passed, which was so incredibly helpful, because if they had continued to try to be an advocate, if they had tried to continue to stand against us, we might not have ever gotten the bill passed. So maybe you're not getting them to become a champion of your bill. Maybe all you're doing is getting them to oppose your bill a little less than they did before, but we have to count that as progress too. And all of these things that we have as skills that we've learned as social workers are all skills that make us effective advocates too. Things like communication, interviewing skills, being able to talk to people and like kind of meet them where they are, to establish rapport. All of those things that we learn in order to interact with our clients are super essential for interacting with our elected officials as well. So at this point, I'm going to transfer back over to sharing my slides for a minute, because I have just a few that are that I think will be helpful. So give me just a second for the transition. Okay, So I'm assuming you guys can see the slides. All right, so this was just back to the about lead and all of the things we were talking about before. All right, so what we're doing basically counts as this Zoom meeting that we're having, even though even though we're not physically in their office, it still counts the same as an in-person constituent visit, because you are their constituents and you're meeting with them. Constituents, which is in case that's a new word, constituents is basically anybody who is a resident of the district where they live, but it's also can be loosely, the literal definition is like you live in their district, you're a voter in their district, you're somebody who will vote for them or against them when the time comes and it's on the ballot. But they care about the folks who are connected to their communities as well. So the people who work in their districts, the people who go to school in their districts, which is kind of what we're using a lot of here. If your permanent address isn't connected to isn't the same as as where your school is located, then you may not be an actual constituent of who you're going to meet with. But the fact that you go to school in their district means that you're a part of the community that they serve and have direct relevant experience. And legislators care about their constituents. They care about the people who they were elected to serve. And that's kind of one of the things that you'll see on this slide, which is that there was a survey done about that asked congressional staff members, if your representative had, if your person had not already made a decision about how they were going to vote on a specific issue, how much impact would the following have? And so it asked about things like, form letters, for example, or getting 100 copies of the same email, or probably some of those change.com surveys or that sort of thing, and they do have some effectiveness, but they were labeled as that only 1% said it would be very effective and 50% said it would have some effectiveness. But the biggest one was this in-person constituent visits, which is what you're going to be doing now. 46% said it would have a lot of impact, and another 51% said it would have at least some impact, which, doing the math makes 97% that said it, that ranked it pretty high on effectiveness levels. I think the other two options were a little or not at all. And so that's definitely one of the skills that we want to get some practice in, because that's going to be the biggest thing that is going to help us make the difference with our, as we kind of do these things. The next most effective things, which are also really good skills to practice. And if for any reason you're attending this training and will not actually be able to participate in any of the legislative events, or for example, if your rep doesn't have an appointment available, or, if something like that happens and you're not able to meet with your representative, then maybe you want to reach out through one of these other means as well, which is an individualized letter. That means you're writing the letter. You can be using talking points or something like that, but you're not using the exact same text from something. You're not copying and pasting from something somebody else wrote, because otherwise they're getting copies of the same letter over and over again. So you're talking about your experiences and why a bill is important to you. That sort of thing was the next most important. Phone calls is the one after that. Again, 14% said it would be very effective. 72% said it would have at least some effectiveness. And I put visit from a lobbyist here because many of you, may be thinking, certainly I might have, that the visit from a lobbyist would be much higher up on that scale. You would think well, that's what they do. These are people who professionally go around and try to make a difference and try to impact legislation. And so, and this is what they do as a career. And so one would think that they were highly effective at making a difference. But only 8% said a visit from a lobbyist would be an effect, would have a lot of impact, while 46% said a visit from a constituent would have a lot of impact. So realize that as far as your legislators are concerned, you have more authority than the people who do this professionally. Myself included. I'll throw my own hat in there. If I'm meeting with your representative, and I don't have you with me, my impact is limited. So some of the immediate skills that just the very simple. I got this one from our. I got this acronym from our Kutztown faculty member and former House member, Tim Sipe. So I always want to give him credit. If you're a Kutztown student, then feel appreciated there. You can give him your Professor Sipe a shout out. But it's that remember your hat when you're meeting with your policymaker. So I have some Pennsylvania hats on there for both sides of the Commonwealth. But the hat is the homework, ask, and thank you. So those are the three things you want to have when you walk into your meeting with your policymaker. One is to have done your homework in advance, like anything that you're able to know. If you're knowledgeable about the issue, if you're knowledgeable about the representative themselves. Do you have anything in common with them? Did you go to the same school? Do you go to the same church? Are there things that you can call on to make an interpersonal connection? One of the greatest stories I know related to that was a person that I knew who was a baseball fan. And he met with a representative who also was a baseball fan, and they were able to just start chatting about baseball and enjoyed that conversation so much that they started meeting up to chat about baseball on a regular basis. And that was somebody who went from being just a regular social worker or social work student who walked into their office to go have a meeting to somebody who could probably text their rep to be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or hey, can I share some thoughts with you about this? Or can you get this bill further up on the agenda? And then that rep eventually moved up through the ranks and later became House Majority Leader. So, it really became a huge freaking deal. But all of that was because the social worker who met with them initially decided to have that conversation about baseball and had done their homework in advance enough to know that the rep that they were meeting with was a baseball fan. And so that was something that they had in common. I personally, baseball isn't my thing, so that would have never been something I could have had in common with them. But, but maybe I might have found something else, or maybe maybe our kids went to the same school or something like that, and we were able to make a connection that way. The ask is make sure you know what you're asking for. We're going to be talking a lot about what the message is for this specific bill. But what are you asking for? Are you asking them to vote for the bill? Are you asking them to bring it up for to bring it up for a vote if they're a person in leadership? What is your ask? Maybe it's just that you're informing them about it just in case, because maybe it's not in their committee yet, but it will be later. So, and that's fine too. Education for education's sake, when we're talking to our reps is also a perfectly good ask. But just know what that is before you come in and make sure that you make the ask. And then the last one is, to be sure to share your appreciation. I think we as social workers are really good about, not coming in guns blazing, not to, and meeting those legislators where they are, like I said before. But legislators frequently get, negative comments, negative feedback. So appreciation, even for things that they've done in the past, can be really helpful. But even something as basic as just showing appreciation for their willingness to meet with you can go a long way. And that includes follow-up after the meeting. If you're able to send them an email or something, then that can be really helpful. Trying to make sure that we're staying on track for time. It looks like we're still pretty good for the moment. All right, so with those constituent visits, to maximize your input, your impact, well, I was actually just talking about that follow-up after the meeting with a thank you. The other piece of that is that one that's to the other side of that on the bottom left corner, which is these say I don't know if needed. If you're asked a question and you don't know the answer, which again, we're not expecting you to be experts in this. We will provide you with some training and information, but we're not expecting you to be experts. So if you're asked a question that you don't know the answer to, just basically say something along the lines of, I don't know, or I'm not sure about the answer to that, but I will follow up. And yes, and then pass those questions back to us. We can either give you the answer, or we can, if there's something that there is an easy answer to, but we can either share what our answer is and let you follow up with them to get back with them after the meeting, or we can pass those questions on to our lobbyists and make sure that our lobbyists are following up with that legislator after the meeting. Either way, you know what that does? Not only does it mean that we're following through and giving them the information that they're asking for, but it provides one more opportunity for us to genuinely connect with our elected officials and remind them about the appointments that we had. So having the need to have a follow-up meeting or to pass on follow-up information is actually a very, very good thing. So yeah, so if you get that, then be sure to say you don't know. The other one I actually spoke about a little bit was those finding the opportunities for connection or rapport. Maybe it's because you did your homework, like from the last slide, and you already know what might be a good opportunity for connection. Maybe it's just something that comes up organically during the meeting. Now, we're only in 15 minutes, so you're not going to have a lot of time, but anything that could kind of help you stand out. If they're having like 20 meetings today, is there anything that's going to make yours a little bit more memorable in like in a positive way? Yeah, you don't want to be memorable for the for the negative way. That's a whole other story, but yeah, anything that can help you stand out or just like help them remember you a little bit more. Don't make assumptions would be another one. Just because they are a member of a particular party, political party, does not mean that they have all of the same values as everybody else. That doesn't mean that they are, for you or against you or anything else. So we have to approach them as an individual. Like again, if we do our homework, we might learn more about their values or things that they voted for in the past. But we're not just going to assume it based on like that they have an R or a D beside their name. If you have any personal stories, those are some of the most effective things that you can have. There are folks who have, oh yeah.
Can I say something here?
Can you interject? You absolutely can,
yes,
Kristie.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so thinking about personal stories, okay? I don't know, again, because we're advocating for telehealth, right? I currently happen to be working as a therapist. Okay, so I'm in the role of a therapist at this time, and use telehealth very often. I again have some college students that do not live in this area, but we have a very good relationship, and we can use telehealth in order to see each other. And have therapy so that you're not having to build rapport with another therapist if you are living on campus and out of your home area, So if you're one of those individuals that have benefited from telehealth, from the perspective of being able to, receive, for instance, like therapy with your home therapist, that is a great and meaningful story to share with a legislator.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kristie. And yeah, so that's just like real specific to this bill. And we all may have like those kinds of stories, or be able to share. We're actually going to be doing in the very near future like a survey of our members to kind of collect some of those stories about like how telehealth has directly benefited them. But yeah, these stories make a huge difference, and a lot of times, you're appealing to, that when we're talking about numbers or abstract principles, it can be real easy for a legislator to be like, oh, well, I'm going to vote for this or not vote for this, like just kind of almost erasing the humanity out of it, and thinking about it based on principle or, again, like abstraction. But if you're talking about real people, whether that be you or people you know, or other stories that you're bringing in from the field, or clients that you've served, or volunteers that you've worked with, et cetera. If you're talking about real people, then the same way that all of us like watch TV or movies and we get invested in like fiction, and we get invested in the characters that we're working with, it makes it a lot harder to talk about, to talk about an issue, or to vote against something that we know is going to hurt a specific individual. And again, that's true. Like that's true regardless of political party. I know that there's a lot of different political stuff out there right now that can sometimes make it difficult to, that when we're on one side and we're passionate about an issue, it can make it really challenging to see the other side, or to see or to ascribe malice to the other party. But most representatives, or most people who are in office, are trying, they're trying their best under their philosophies and their value systems to help the people that they serve. We just may very strongly disagree about what that means and how that actually happens. So again, if we're able to share stories about like people who will be impacted by this, then that can make a huge difference. All of that being said, there is some strategy behind things. Even when our elected officials are meeting with their reps, if they already feel passionately about an issue, they're going to try to dissuade you from doing more to make a difference because they disagree with you. So if you do meet with a rep and they're actively telling you stuff like, well, I don't know why you're bringing me this bill. This bill doesn't have a chance of passing. We've had folks be told that and have the bill later pass. So, it's maybe that's true, maybe it's not. And no matter what, we're always trying to make a difference with, just doing education or getting things just a little bit further down the finish line. Like just trying to make it to the next like yard line on the football field. But it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get a touchdown this year. So, we do have to be prepared for the legislators themselves to maybe show some resistance, especially if they disagree with you. They're probably not going to argue with you directly, but they may try to dissuade you. So just be aware of that. And again, like how would you treat your clients as a social worker if they were like a hostile client or were showing some resistance to making the change that you're asking them to make as in a therapeutic kind of perspective. So those same skills that we know and love as social workers, we're able to use in these kinds of fields as well. Okay, and then the dynamics of change that as I was just kind of hinting, sometimes we're not going to make it as a touchdown, and I don't know. It could be the case this time as well. I have some hopes, but when we get to talking about the actual issue, we'll see that there are some significant things that that stand in our way, that are some pretty massive obstacles. So we very well might not make it to the finish line this time. But if you ask 100 people for the opposite of success, 99 would say failure. But the opposite of success is not failure, because we learn from our failures, and we're able to utilize what we learn from those failures to later on and become successful. So it is the unwillingness, it's giving up or being unwilling to try again, that is actually the opposite of success. If you did a survey, actually they did do a survey of advocates and lobbyists, et cetera, and asked about elected officials themselves, and asked about the characteristics that made successful advocates. The top 3 characteristics of the adjectives that were described are all like practically synonyms of each other. And that goes to persistence, tenacity, and patience. So being involved in the legislative arena at all means that you're going to be utilizing like that kinds of skills. We're not going to expect change to happen immediately. We're not going to get frustrated and tell folks, that they're not doing enough. Although, we certainly will push them to do more. And we're going to have patience to be in this for the long haul, because that's what's important for making a change at the legislative arena. The last bill that we got passed, the Practice Protection Act, Act 76, it was over 10 years between when the bill was proposed and when it went into effect. Like BSW licensure, I think, was another 5 years on advocating for it to pass, and another 5 years of advocating for it to actually be implemented as the policies to get it to go into effect took a really long time too. So all of this is definitely about having that persistence and tenacity. It's real easy for us as advocates to get discouraged, to feel like we're not making a difference. I can tell you story after story of people that I've talked to after Advocacy Day who felt like that they hadn't done anything at all, just to have. Well, for example, like I said, you always can almost track the impact that Advocacy Day has, because things kind of start moving. So you individually might feel like you might not have done a lot, but when you add it all together with what everybody else did, as I said, it makes a measurable impact and a difference. So make sure that you aren't underestimating yourself, and that you feel that part of it. And it's far easier for the legislature, for General Assembly, for Congress, any of that. It's far easier to do nothing than something. It's easier to kill a bill than it is to pass a bill. It's easier to throw up the one obstacle that that then they can't get over. So we'll keep that in mind as well. And that's all kind of connects to this last piece, that, just in the last legislative session that we had, there were 5,701 bills filed and only 1,200 passed. So that's it's about 20% approximately. And the vast majority of the bills that were filed that didn't get passed, never even got a single hearing. They just were filed and then sat there for waiting for something to happen that never did. And that all of this can take a really long time. And I won't spend a ton of time on this right now, because it's not super relevant to the issue that we're working with, but definitely it's something to know, that the standard is 4 years, but it can take much longer. Like I said, the last bill took 10 years, and then eventually was finally passed just a few years ago. All right. So that's our brief advocacy training. Now we want to transition. Kristie, is there anything you want to add before we transition to talking about the bill itself?
No, and then we also have Kim here, Kim Hardner from Edinburgh, part of Causeway. She's here with us too, adding some beautiful comments in the chat section. So shout out to Kim. Yeah, shout out to Kim. Yeah, again, like, please don't feel discouraged. Our big thing coming out of attending LEAD is we want you to feel empowered. We want you to feel like your voice matters, that the work that you did really helped push this forward for Pennsylvania, and regardless of what the outcome is, know that you just attending and participating and engaging, is going to make such a difference, if not that day, it will down the road. So don't feel discouraged, regardless of what the outcome. And if the outcome is it passes, oh, you better believe it will have a party. It's a big deal. So, we'll have a Zoom celebration or something. So
we sure will. I guarantee it.
We love the party. So.
All right. So. Now we're going to spend like our remaining time, which I'm impressed. We still have like 21 minutes left. We're actually, if anything, a few minutes early, which I won't complain if we end up wrapping up early, like if we manage to get through everything. But if not, if it actually like allows us to spend a little bit more time on the bill, or if we, can address questions at the end, then that's great too. So I'm just going to go through not a ton about the bill itself, although I will tell you about like what the bill does. But in some ways, that's almost like not important because that's not like a super big part of what our message is. We're going to focus more on like those bottom pieces, so why it matters and what our message is. So this does not, the Senate Bill 705 is a broad telehealth bill that allows telehealth in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's not specific to behavioral health, like psychology, psychiatry, social work, marriage and family therapy, like all of those behavioral health fields, but it does definitely impact us. The way that things were before the pandemic is that telehealth was not, there is no telehealth bill in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania right now. There's nothing that says that we can't have telehealth, but there's also nothing that allows it. And in the absence of having any kind of comprehensive policy, the impact of that is that it will depend on it will depend on the therapist. It will sort of depend on the field. It will depend on the insurance company, like Medicare, Medicaid, all sorts of things like that. So you get down in it, and there is, and then there's basically no regulation. There's nothing saying like that. Okay. So because there is no policies governing how telehealth has to happen, the result is that it kind of ends up being chaotic. For a long time before the pandemic hit, like most social workers in Pennsylvania weren't practicing via telehealth. Many thought that they weren't necessarily allowed to. And then the pandemic happened, and of course we all got into quarantine, and mental health was obviously still an issue. We weren't going to not have telehealth at all because of, or we weren't not going to have any kind of healthcare at all, regardless of the fact that we were still in quarantine. And so the governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Wolf, put into place the emergency declaration, and then as part of that, he put in waivers that were kind of emergency policies that were only true during the pandemic. One of those waivers was specifically regarding telehealth, and it mandates that insurance companies reimburse for telehealth or cover telehealth at the same rate that they cover for physical, like face-to-face office visits. Those waivers, after the emergency declaration kind of timed out, the governor's power to extend the emergency declarations also was ended by that constitutional amendment. The legislature, now the General Assembly for Pennsylvania, now has the responsibility for making those, for extending those waivers or choosing not to extend them anymore. The current situation is that they have been extended but the deadline on that is March 31st, which means that March 22nd in lead will be right before all of those waivers would be set to expire one more time. They might end up extending the waivers again. They might not. There's maybe a good chance that they will, but regardless, part of the way that they're handling all of this is to say, like, well, which one of these, out of all of these things that these waivers did, which ones of these should we make permanent or which ones should we not? Telehealth is sort of an obvious choice, but it's also one of the really big ones, because there's no way for it to happen without it being directly passed by the General Assembly. It's not something that like the governor can just decide to do. It's not something that like our licensing boards can just enact and make policies or regulatory changes on, like some of the other waivers that have since become permanent. It definitely has to happen through the General Assembly. And some folks are going, especially even in the General Assembly, are going like, well, you know, we don't see why this is important. Telehealth is happening. Like, well, yeah, but telehealth is happening right now because of the waivers. And so if we want to have a definite policy on that, we're going to have to continue, you know, we're going to have to continue to advocate for a comprehensive telehealth policy. There are already social workers who currently are in practice who every time that these waivers come up and are potentially about to expire, they're getting letters from their insurance companies saying like, hey, after this date, we're no longer going to reimburse for telehealth. So you can definitely tell that there would be a difference, that things would change if the waivers are just allowed to expire. And that some companies would no longer, so that would mean like if some companies do reimburse for telehealth and others don't, and others reimburse like partially, but not at the same rate than they do for telehealth, then that's going to have significant impact on access, because there are huge factors, especially where mental health is concerned, where having telehealth available improves access. It improves access for people with disabilities. It improves access for people who are in rural areas who might otherwise have to like commute an hour or 2 hours to be in a visit. It helps improve access for people who might be dealing with like barriers from facing stigma about like not like seeing they're getting treatment for mental health as a weakness and not wanting to be witnessed, or seen going into an office that might have an easier time. There are also specific mental health conditions like agoraphobia, for example, that can be really helpful for telehealth practice. And then finally, there are times when somebody might otherwise be ill or unable to leave the house for some reason, and then having telehealth available, regardless of whether there's a pandemic, having telehealth available would ensure that they continue to get access to mental health treatment when and where they need it. Kristie, I'm sure you have comments to add there about like why it's important, since you're, the clinician who's actually doing this stuff.
Yeah. Just echo 100%, just seeing the benefit for many that has enabled people to seek mental health because of a lot of those barriers through telehealth has just been really wonderful. We know that like, people sometimes feel more comfortable at home. They can feel more vulnerable to share, often. We have people that, maybe aren't feeling well, like maybe they have a stomach ache or, a cold and they don't want to go out, but they still want to have their therapy session. They're able to participate and continue to, work on their mental health. I think the access with just the technology that we have, we kind of, in order to push Pennsylvania forward and to help people, overcome their mental health, their own journey with mental health, like we really need this bill to pass, to be able to help those. And then even just for care, again, talking about people that are already established and again, maybe moved location because of, again, college, being able to still meet with their therapist. Again, just very important.
Mm-hmm. So for sure. So the last little square here, the what our message is and how that's super important. All right, so I'm going to share a little bit about the history of this bill in the past, and kind of tell you what we want our message to be versus what we don't want the one big thing we don't want our message to be. So the history of this bill, which is kind of why messaging is so important, is it has previously passed in Pennsylvania and ended up getting vetoed. But the reason for that is because of certain amendments that would get attached. So when you talk to your reps, there's a really good chance that they are already would be in support of the bill, that they're not going to have a huge obstacle about it. But what we do want to advocate for, what our message is that we want the bill to be passed clean. And what that means in context is that it means without some of those amendments that would almost guarantee that it would get vetoed. Specifically, there is one member of the House who will inevitably attach an amendment to Senate Bill, it wasn't Senate Bill 705 then, but to the bill that, in previous sessions when it went through, that would restrict any kind of not all reproductive care, but any kind of abortion-related services from happening over telehealth. That amendment would get attached to the bill. It's happened 2 or 3 times already over the past 6 to 8 years as they've been trying to get this bill passed. It did happen last session. And then at that point, the bill passed anyway, but it passed with that amendment attached. And Governor Wolf, who has a commitment to not increasing any kind of restrictions for reproductive care, chose to veto the bill because that would go against what his policy was. However, all of that being said, we can't let telehealth and this particular issue, we have to keep the focus not on reproductive care, but we have to keep the focus on all of the other kinds of care, all of the clients who are being served, and making sure that we just emphasize that the bill needs to pass cleanly. The bill needs to pass in a way that Governor Wolf will, that Governor Wolf will be able to sign. They will know without you saying a word about what the amendment is, or what the potential issue is. If you talk about it passing cleanly, they should, without any kind of extraneous amendment, they should know, they'll know what you're talking about. And I think where we're really emphasizing here is, again, they've passed the bill before. They're willing to pass it. And that goes for the whole telehealth piece. But they know that the fact that they are attaching these amendments means that it won't become law. They know that Governor Wolf will veto it. They just aren't seeing the importance of what this, of what the impact of this bill is and why it needs to become law now. And the fact that these telehealth, that the waivers are about to expire again, the fact that people all over the Commonwealth are currently being served means that this isn't just an abstraction anymore. We're talking about actual people who will have a disruption of services, who will no longer have access to the care that they need, including mental health care, which is certainly where, which is not the only thing, it impacts everything from, being at your, having virtual visits with your dentist or your physical therapist or all sorts of things. It impacts all of that. But our focus is definitely going to be on the mental health field, and how having a sudden disruption of treatment could have real impact on people's lives. So again, what our message is that this bill is too important to allow other issues to go into effect. They need to ensure that the bill passes cleanly, and that if any kind of amendment comes up, we would ask them to vote no on that amendment. So that's my synopsis of the bill. Again, we will be having a real hour-long deep dive on that will be specifically on this bill, and we'll have written talking points available that you'll be able to access. And a whole booklet of information that will include like pieces about like the bill itself and that sort of thing. Again, the bill is Senate Bill 705, so you can look that up on the legislative webpage right now. Do any research that you want to do in advance. And if you, and as you do that, if you come up with questions or things that you don't understand, it's a long bill. Again, I'm going to tell you, it's not important that you like learn all of the intricacies of the bill itself. The most important thing is to be able to talk about it in principle and to talk about it in stories about like how people will be impacted if we fail to make this bill a reality prior to the waivers getting cut off.
And again, we have these wonderful events leading up to LEAD. That week before, I would strongly encourage, if you are planning to attend LEAD, that focusing in and coming on the day that we're really talking about the messaging is very important. Again, like I put in the chat section, this isn't our time right now to have discussion with our legislators about our own views on reproductive rights. We really need to focus in on the message to get this specific telehealth bill passed. So again, we all might have very strong views, but we have to remember what our goal is for this specific bill.
All right. While I was screen sharing, I wasn't able to like keep an eye on the chat, so I'm hopeful that y'all did. But Kristie, is there or Kim, is there anything that you want to bring up that might be highlighted from the chat that we want to bring up more for make sure everyone hears it?
Oh, we can't hear you, Kim.
Yeah, Kim, I can see you're talking, but we can't hear you, even though you did unmute yourself.
Okay, put it in the chat.
Put it in the chat.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah.
Kristie, did you have anything?
No, I don't believe so. Just time is of the essence here. Yeah, right. Definitely, definitely, Kim. It really is. Whenever it came to Act 76, we were one of the last 2 states in the United States to have title protection. And we don't want to be the last of the states to have this telehealth bill. Like, it is so important that we have it. Our Commonwealth is so vast. We are a very large state. We serve a lot of people. We really need to get this telehealth bill passed to be able to take care of the physical and mental health of the members of this state, of this Commonwealth. You know, it's so important for LEAD. Please, I'd encourage you to get your friends to attend. If you're at a field placement, ask your field supervisor liaison to also participate. You know, if it's even just, you know, to make a call to their legislator to give an ask. You know, you can give your field supervisors the one sheet page as well, direct them to our page for at NASW to tell a little bit more about what we're advocating for. But we need both a professional and student push to help get this bill passed. You know, again, your voice is just needed, really needed on the 22nd. It's a really great event. I really wish we were in person, but we're going to have a really great time anyway on the 22nd and leading up to that too.
Yep. So. One of the things that I wonder about, you know, is that sometimes, again, most people are in favor of the bill itself on principle. It's just a question of getting it passed cleanly. But some of the folks who might be like more proponents of like the amendment are also some of the folks who might come from some of these rural areas, who are also like some of the areas who are most greatly impacted or affected by having telehealth as an option. Because it really truly does, you know, so I think that there's maybe something to be said for really emphasizing with your elected official, like how their constituents, you know, especially if you know, regardless of whether you are from a rural or a, you know, or from like, you know, one of our big cities, that regardless, like their constituents are currently benefiting from getting telehealth services. And you know, and like I saw in the chat, someone mentioned about that physical health is, or that mental health is just as important as physical health and almost more important. I mean, there are probably people who like right now might otherwise be facing life-threatening mental illnesses if it wasn't for, you know, if it wasn't for getting that access to care. So we want to make sure that that service is not disrupted. The last thing I'll say, because this is one of the last trainings that does not involve that you don't necessarily have to have already registered for LEAD in order to be here today. So with that being said, you know, we charge the $10. The $10 is, it's not a token amount. It's important that we charge in order to make sure that we have the resources to continue to make LEAD a possibility. You know, and we know that $10 can be a lot for even, you know, for if you're trying to make, if you're a college student trying to get through your budget, that $10 can be somewhat of a big ask. So I want to say that, you know, that, yeah, we do need to do it because it's really important that we be able to make sure that we're able to offer this as a service, but we also don't want to keep anybody. We don't want that $10 to be a barrier to attending. So, you know, if your school is paying for you, great. You know, if you're able to just, you know, pay the $10 without, you know, without that much of a challenge, that's also great. But if the $10 would actively keep you from otherwise attending, please reach out because, again, you know, we really feel like this legislative issue is important. We really, you know, we appreciate the help and the support that you're providing. And, you know, we very well may be able to work with you because we do not want there to be a financial barrier to attending LEAD. So again, if that's the case, then please feel free to reach out to me and I will make sure I put my email in the chat before we sign off. Now, with that being said, we actually, that's perfect. It's 7:31 right now. And that was the last thing I wanted to say. So that actively works for being the sign off to our training. Again, oh, and Kristie just put my email in the chat for me, so along with hers. So that's perfect. Make sure to note these. Again, this recording of this will be available. And if anyone wants to hang on to ask even the most basic of questions, we will stick around here until everyone has signed off. So
And
thank you
also-
everyone for attending.
Also, Joanna and I love to talk to social workers, students, professionals, faculty, anyone that wants to talk social work, reach out and connect with us. You know, we're so appreciative of all of you being here tonight and taking time out of your day to be with us, and looking forward to seeing y'all at LEAD.
Yep, and we're also willing to come talk to your class. So if you can think of anything you would want a guest speaker for, get us the invite, and we're perfectly willing to come be a speaker in your classroom. So thanks everyone.
Yep, thank you. I had the wonderful opportunity of being at Slippery Rock today virtually. Woo woo. Yep.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording. And like I said, we'll hang out for questions. So again, final sign off. So if you were a part of the recording, thank you, and we'll see you at LEAD.